Kuf Amud Aleph, 5 lines from the top. We've just established that our Mishnah that says Arvi Pesachim, that an Erev Pesach, that Samach L'Mincha we don't eat because we want to be able to eat the matzah te'oven. So Arvi Pesachim or Erev Pesach Samach L'Mincha Lo Yochel Matzah Tershach. That's going according to Rabbi Yosi. According to Rabbi Yosi, that on Erev Shabbos and Erev Yontav, there's no Isser to refrain from eating. It's Davka on Erev Pesach. So Rav Huna said that the Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Yosi, but however, Rabbi Yosi is Maida that by Erev Pesach that there is an Isser Tiv. Rabbi Yehuda says that the Isser of eating applies both to Erev Shabbos and Erev Yontav, and even Samach L'Mincha. But Rav Yosi argues, but he's Maida that an Erev Pesach that the Isser does apply. But even according to Rav Huna, is that a viable pshat in the Mishnah? He says that the halacha is like Rav Yehuda Erev Pesach, that you do have to refrain from eating Samach L'Mincha. Halacha ki Rav Yosi b'Erev Shabbos. But the halacha is like Rav Yosi on Erev Shabbos, that you don't have to refrain. Now, by saying that the halacha is like Rav Yehuda and Erev Pesach, halacha ki Rav Yehuda b'Erev Pesach, mechlal the polig Rav Yosi b'Tarvayim. Doesn't that imply that Rav Yosi argues by both, not only by Erev Shabbos, but he also argues by Erev Pesach, because Rav Yosi is Maida by Erev Pesach, you have to refrain from eating Samach L'Mincha. So why does he say halacha or Rav Yehuda? Rav Yosi would also agree with that. Elamai, doesn't that show you that Rav Yosi argues on both, and even on Erev Pesach? So is Rav Huna's pshat really viable? The Gemara says, "Lo halacha mechlal the pligi b'hafsoka." Now, this when he say that they're arguing that, and there's halacha to Rabbi Yehuda and Erev Pesach, it's not referring to the halacha in our Mishnah of refraining from eating somach l'mincha and Erev Pesach. Look, I made that halacha. I'll tell you, Rabbi Yosi is maida. That he's maida that you can't start eating, that you can't eat somach l'mincha on Erev Pesach. What is he saying that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda Gabi Pesach? It's not referring to that halacha. It's referring to a different halacha. It's referring to hafsaka, to stop, for interrupting. Meaning, if a person had started eating, so the Taisa explains it, that he started eating b'shas haheter. He started eating before the time of Samach L'Mincha, and now he started earlier. He's continuing to eat. He's allowed to continue to eat. He can't start eating Samach L'Mincha, but if he started earlier, he's allowed to continue. But now, if it comes Leil Pesach, if it comes Pesach night, does he have to stop? That's a different machlekes. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to stop. According to Rabbi Yosi, you don't have to stop. So when it says that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda on Pesach, is referring to this halacha of stopping. But I'll tell you that as far as not eating Samach L'Mincha, even Rav Yosi would agree to that. That Rav Yosi would agree as well. So that's what it's referring to. It's referring to the halacha if stopping or not. The Sanya Vilim the Braisa Mafsikin L'Shabbosa is on Erev Shabbos. Now, if a person was eating and he continued on to Shabbos, you have to stop. The Rav Yehuda and Rav Yosi Aimer Ein Mafsikin. And Rav Yosi says you don't have to stop. You can continue eating. The Chedush Haran asks the kasha that l'chera it seems to be difficult if Rav Yosi says that you can't eat Erev Pesach because you have to eat the Pesach the matzah l'te'ovan. So if he's eating Erev Pesach, he started b'shas hater, he's eating. How can he continue to eat through the night? Rav Yosi himself holds that he has to eat the Pesach Te'oven. So therefore, you don't start to eat Samach L'Mincha. Well, then why does Rav Yosi say that you don't have to stop? If it's nighttime, why don't you have to stop? So the Chedush Haran explains that if a person is eating as he's continuing to eat, he still has appetite. The stomach is open and he has appetite. So then we're less concerned about eating the Matzah Te'oven. If he stops, and then to start again, there's more of a concern that he won't eat the matzah te'oven. Al kol panim, we have this machlekes that if he was eating it and now he ate into the night, do you have to stop or don't you have to stop? So that's a machlokes that mafsikin l'shabbat says. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to stop eating, you can't continue eating. And Rabbi Yosi says that you don't have to stop. If you started beheter, you can continue eating. So Rabbi Yehuda says you have to stop, which means that you have to stop the meal, and you bench, and then you remove the food from the table, and you bench, and then you start again, you say Kiddush, and you bring the food back to the table, and you start again. Rabbi Yosi says you don't have to. Rabbi Yosi holds, as Tosfos explains, that you can continue eating at nightfall, even though it's already nightfall. You can continue eating, you bench, you say Birchos Hamazon, you say Kiddush. Now, even though it's after the fact, but since you were eating at nighttime, and you're eating when it was Shabbos, it was considered, the Kiddush that you're saying is considered to be a Kiddush on that meal of Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda, on the other hand, holds, no, you can't. Because you can't, if you just continue in that way, the meal is considered to be a continuation of the meal that you started earlier. And therefore, it doesn't have the appearance of a Kiddush on the suit of Shabbos. So the way Tosfos explains it is that that's the machlokes. He's eating, he's continuing to eat at nightfall. Do we say that the eating at nightfall is therefore a suit of Shabbos, and the Kiddush that he makes afterwards is a Kiddush on the suit of Shabbos? That's what Rav Yosi holds, or Rav Yehuda holds, that no, it's not considered to be a Suda of Shabbos, because since he started in the daytime and he just continued eating, Rav Yehuda holds that it's one continual meal. It's just a continuation of the meal that he had earlier, and therefore it's not considered a Suda Shabbos. That's why you have to be mafsik. Dovid explains it a little bit differently. He says that Rav Yehuda holds that l'koved Shabbos, that you have to make it and bring it out specially for the covet of Shabbos. That's what Rabbi Yehuda holds. So then we see this machlokes in the brayso of you have to be mafsik. Rabbi Yehuda says you have to be mafsik, and Rabbi Yehuda says ein mafsikin. O ma'isa Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yosi was o ma'isa Yomi Masechet ba'akai. They had a mesuda together. They were mesubin in akai v'kiddush shalem hayom. And now it became Shabbos, it got dark, and it was Shabbos in the middle of the meal. Amr lo Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Rabbi Yosi said to Rabbi Yosi, Berebi is a lotion of a gadol b'dar. He said, Retzainecha nafsek v'neshchol divrei Yehuda chavirecha. Do you want, should we be mafsek and be chayshish through the dvarim of Rabbi Yehuda? Should we be machmir like Rabbi Yehuda? One pshat, or another pshat is, should we be show covered for Rabbi Yehuda and be mafsik on his account? So, is that your rotzen that we should be mafsik v'nechshel divrei Rabbi Yehuda chavireinu? Amar loi, Rav Yosi answered, B'chol v'yayim atam mechav dvar lefnei Rabbi Yehuda. Generally speaking, you are praise my words in front of Rabbi Yehuda. Now here in front of me, and Rabbi Yehuda's here, and in front of me, you're machav of his words. You want to capture the queen with me in the house? That was by Achashverosh and Haman and Esther. Achashverosh said to Haman, you want to capture the queen with me in the house? Meaning in front of me, in my presence, and you want to now be chayshish for divrei Rabbi Yehuda? Amar loi, Rav Shimon Gamliel said to him, Mikain, if that's the case, loi nafsik, we should dafka not be mafsik. Shem yira talmidim v'yiku halacha l'deres. Because it's a chashash that if we are chayshish for Rabbi Yehuda, the chachamim, the talmidim will see us doing it this way, and will think that dafka the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, and it'll be kaiveya for future generations, the halacha like Rabbi Yehuda. And Amr lo yizalzu misham asher kavah halacha Rabbi Yosi. And therefore they didn't depart from that until they were kaveh. The halacha is like Rabbi Yosi, that on Erev Shabbos you don't have to be mafsik. On Erev Shabbos, on Yom Tovim, you don't have to be mafsik. Tosfos explains, initially Rabbi Shimon Gamliel thought maybe we should show cover for Rabbi Yehuda. So, or like the Tosfos says, do we want to be machmer? Should be machmer. However, now that he saw that Rav Yossi is makbid, so now he said davkenata, meaning initially he was in chayshish that the Talmidim will think that that's halacha because they'll think that he wants to be mechavev. He wants to be mechavev Rav Yehuda, but now that Rav Yossi is makbid, and if now they would do like Rav Yehuda, here there's a concern that the Talmidim will think that davka the halacha is like Rav Yehuda because by halacha l'dar, so they davka said the halacha is not that way. Omar Rav Yehuda Shmuel, ein halacha like Rav Yehuda, like Rav Yossi. He said the halacha is like neither one of them. Ela peiros mapa mekadesh. He spreads a cloth on it over the food and he makes kiddush. Meaning, you don't have to remove the food. You don't have to be oiker shulchan. Like Rav Yehuda said, you can't continue eating. Like Rav Yossi says, there's something in the middle. You're peiros mapa. You cover the food with a mapa and you're a kaddish. So one pshat in that is that the Rashbam says is that just like we make on Kiddush regularly during the year on Shabbos, when we make Kiddush, you cover the food with a cloth, you cover the challah with a cloth. Here also you cover the challah with the food with a cloth, and you make Kiddush. Or alternatively, he says the pshat is that just like Rav Yehuda says that you have to break up the Suda, so it should be considered one Suda. Now Rav Yehuda says you're Eiker Shulchan, he says, Shmuel says you don't have to be Eiker Shulchan, you're Paras Map. There's a Machlekes in the Achreinim, and the Rishonim, what does this entail? If you're Paras Map, do you have to bench and then make Kiddush? Or it's just more symbolic that you cover the food and you don't actually have to bench, in the Marsha and Rabbeinu Dovid. The Rashbam asks, how can it be that Shmuel says this third shita? Shmuel the Amoira, how do you say a third shita? And we paskin beforehand that kavu achikavu Allah Rav Yossi. Rashbam says be'etzem Shmuel paskin Rav Yossi. He's just being machmir. Really, then you can continue eating. He's just being machmir and says you're peiros mapa. So on that basis, then there is a question: does he hold this way on Erev Pesach as well? Meaning, on this basis that he's saying that be'etzem he paskins like Rav Yossi, he's just being machmir. Well, that would apply during the rest of the year if we say the halacha is like Rav Yossi on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So that's the halacha, and therefore you'd say that you can really make your dinner mutter is machlim b'poyes map. But on Erev Pesach, on Pesach night, where we say that the halacha is like Rav Yehuda, over there we would say that no, you would have to be actually stopped because we passed on the halacha on Pesach night like Rav Yehuda. Others, however, say that Taisus and other Rishonim say that Shmuel, this is a third shita, and it's in Yerushalmi, it brings down that there's a third shita of Tanoim who holds that this is what you do, meaning he's not being machmir. It's not that he bets him holds like Rav Yossi being machmir. There's a third shita in the Tanoim.